Hi, this is Jamie Escalante, and I'm going to speak briefly on critical theory and the House of Fame by Geoffrey Chaucer, while reflecting on a few ideas from Gaston Bachelard from his book, The Poetics of Space. So the passage that I have selected to utilize to analyze Chaucer's work here is the last one, last option we were given, the connection between literature and open and closed space. Quote, by means of poetic language, waves of newness flow over the surface of being, and language bears within itself the dialectics of open and closed. Through meaning it encloses, while through poetic expression it opens up. So, I have just gathered a bit of information here and some passages and examples from the House of Fame by Geoffrey Chaucer that are interesting when viewed through this specific lens of this theory. So although it's very new to me to think about the way that language works and this idea of opening and closing and this meaning as being somewhat anchoring, whereas a poetic structure or wording or just poetic device can be used to transport or open up the reader or our minds to or through different avenues. I will do my best to communicate what I believe I've learned and been able to discern from the passages I've selected, and in no means an exhaustive look at the poem. Okay, so this is just an overview here, what we'll be looking at. Just a note on the Middle and Modern English. I've used modern English excerpts from his work because I struggle so much with the Middle English, and because it's the meaning that we're looking at as encouraged by Gaston Bachelard. I do not believe that we're missing anything. Granted, we do not get the sound of the text the way that it was originally intended, but that is discussed as a separate matter. First, the poem structure is something that stood out to me when thinking about the sort of cognitive open and closing. I've written here the beginnings, endings, and consistent progression. Here I'm talking about the structure. We have Book 1, the invocation, the dream. Book 2, the invocation, the dream. Book 3, same thing. It accentuates the meaning found within each subheading there, and opens the reader up to various interpretations, ideas, and possibilities throughout the reading of the poem. So I would submit here that the poem structure forms a foundation through which or upon which the reader is able to view the specific poem through the lens referred to that Bachelard purports were able to utilize to analyze the text. For example, the introduction, and I'll read this. It says, "Good luck in this to great clerks who treat of this matter and others, for I will now make note of no opinion, but only pray that the Holy Cross will turn every dream to good for us. For never have I, since I was born, nor any man else before me, I firmly believe, dreamed so wonderful a dream as I did, the 10th day of December, which as I can now recall it, I will tell you in full." So a very dramatic introduction, and here we're looking at the meaning specifically, as the sound of the original Middle English were lacking, which could also be referred to as a poetic device or means through which to convey a different type of meaning. But here we're just looking at the meaning of the words, and we are introduced here to the narrator and informed that he will begin to disclose information regarding a dream. And I state here, the reader pauses to consider the meaning in these lines. It is simultaneously catapulted out of the locked room of imagination into an open room termed, which is the next step, the invocation. Thus, both the structure of the poem, in addition to poetic imagery, ushers the reader through the openings and closings of cognitive shift. So though we are pausing to take in what's being stated, we're also, at the same time, being opened up to consider various implications as we are ushered into the invocation. Here I have a couple of examples from the text that I believe are illustrative of this idea Bachelard purports. I'll read this one. It says, "And then I looked down and beheld fields and plains, and now hills, now mountains, now valleys, now forests, and now, but I scarcely saw them, great beasts, now rivers, now cities, now towns, now great trees, now ships sailing on the sea. But soon, after a while, he had flown so high from the ground that the entire world seemed no more than a point to my eyes, or else the air was so thick that I could discern nothing. With that he spoke to me then, and said, 'Do you see any town, or anything that you know, down yonder?'" This is fascinating because, yes, the narrator is describing an actual journey that took place in his dream, and he is going into detail about it, and we're able to go along that with him. But but we also have the opportunity to look at it through a different lens. We can think about what this might mean, what this traveling upward might mean. We can think about what it would be to be so high above the ground that the entire world seemed no more than a point to my eyes. This could also be indicative of the narrator referring to perhaps exploration of the imagination. This could be an experience that could take place through pure reading or study, or even just relational experiences. The type of characterizing that which is common, which is like fields, plains, hills, as something that is beneath us as we continue to move forward and fly high above the ground, along with something that is somewhat foreign, who we have here is asking questions, asking if we see anything that we know. And although that could be interpretation or analysis could be very much reading into the text, I think it's an example of what Bachelard is talking about, where a language can have a very precise and specific meaning, but can also open us up to different aspects of ourselves, or different parts of us when we consider different interpretations, what something might mean to me today, and what it might mean to me in maybe 5 years. The next passage is just very similar, just something of the same, just another example. Here we have just a few lines that I selected that I thought were good examples also of the same type of idea. I favor the second one, where it says, "For lo, by heaven, all that glitters is not gold." And here this line comes when the narrator is talking about Aeneas and Dido, and I like the implications of this specific sentence and the various different ways that it can be interpreted, and also what it potentially does mean in that specific context that he's referring to it in line 272, if you want to go back and review it and think on your own what it is. But I also like the the phrasing and it's not necessarily alliteration, it's only 2 G's, but all that glitters is not gold. There's something about that phrase that I've always kind of been drawn to, and I think that it is just another way that we see language can truly be an avenue through which different parts of ourselves are explored and experienced because of just who we are and how we're made. And I think that in this poem specifically, The House of Fame, I think Chaucer actually refers to that type of idea a lot. I think when we see him refer to location so often, like where he talks about Italy, he talks about the Milky Way, he talks about he goes into detail about different places, and I think that he's very well in tune with his readers and our imaginations and deep exploration and just deep meaning and thought that can be invoked in the meaning that words do hold, and how to utilize them to create and affect a specific idea. Here, I just wanted to mention a bit about the sound of the poem when it's read in the Middle English. I think that it's so melodic, and the rhyming, I think, really adds to the poem itself, and I think just the sound of the poem can be seen as a poetic device that's apart from the actual meaning of the poem, and I think that in and of itself opens us up to the journey of what the House of Fame actually is. And here I just wrote the idea of rapid succession, movement, structure, imagery, and sound of the poem when read out loud all contribute to the cultivation of an opening of the mind, which is accentuated by the cognitive grounding when the meaning is considered. And so all I mean by that is just that all of those elements add to the meaning of the poem, which I think ultimately cultivates an interpretation of the poem as unfinished, and what the implications of that might be when this specifically is considered. I've written, the ending seems to be in line with the overall structure of the book. The reader is confronted by an abrupt ending with the introduction of a seemingly important character, which is the man of authority. This anchoring confrontation soon transforms into a permanent opening, again going just back to the opening and closing theme here from Bachelard, in that the reader must ponder what the implications of such an ending are. So here, Chaucer leaves us to consider ourselves what the meaning of his ending is. This line stood out to me. Says, and at this the eagle cried out and said, set aside your fancies. Do you wish to learn anything about stars? And I think the eagle is heavy with symbolism. I think do you wish to learn anything about stars is heavy with symbolism. And I think again here we're challenged to think beyond what the language itself and what the actual practical meaning could be, and encouraged to take it for ourselves, to set aside our fancies, so to speak, and think beyond, which is I think what Chaucer wanted. The end.